Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of In Grok We Trust. In this series I talk about religion and belief and the human mind, those sorts of things. And in this second episode I want to talk a little bit about exactly how I see the world. In the first episode I talked about that, but I sort of started from when I was a child and talked about all the things that led up to this point, all the things that happened with me that made me think the way I do. And in this episode, I'd like to talk exactly about that, about how I see things right now. Also, please don't think that these episodes are going to always be about me talking about what I think. That's not the intention at all. It's just that, in the beginning few episodes, I'd like to establish a ground base so that you guys know where I stand for when we talk about different things in the future. So, alright, I think that most of you know that I am an unbeliever, if you've watched my other videos. Yeah, I don't believe in any gods or any of the world's religions, and I'm generally a skeptical person. I like to call myself intellectually honest. And so, of course, this makes me atheist. That's what most people would call that, right? Atheist. And I've called myself other things before, like agnostic, with an I, not an A. Agnostic, or non-cognitivist, or even Pastafarian. My favorite is Pastafarian, because it gets people, people ask, oh, well, what's that? Or they'll go and look it up, which is the point that I want to say, because I don't like these terms. Usually, if it's a well-known term like atheist, people have preconceptions of it, and so they already form an opinion and a first impression. When you say, oh, I'm atheist, they already, like, somebody may have had some really bad experience with some asshole atheists on the internet, and so yeah, then they've already got that idea of you. And yes, there are many atheists in the world who are complete assholes, and yeah, so this is a problem, I think, with everything, right? That's why you get so many people who say, oh, I'm Christian, but I don't go to church, and I'm not one of those really heavy Christians who wants to try and convince you of anything. And if you are a conservative, maybe you're a conservative, but you're sort of in the center politically, then you always want to explain, I'm right, I lean to the right politically, but da-da-da-da-da. And you have to explain yourself. So when it comes to this subject of religion, I like to actually not say anything. I prefer to get them to ask me more specific questions about what I believe or what I don't believe, so that they can get to know me better. There's also another reason I don't like these terms, especially the term atheist. It's that, and Sam Harris explains this much better than I do in a video which I'll put in the description. Basically, like, you don't have a term, for example, for people who don't believe in astrology, right? You get the people who do, the astrologists, and then the rest of the people who are just normal and don't believe that. You don't get astrologists, or racists, for example. You get racists in the world, but do all the people who are not racist call themselves racists? And do they get together and talk about racism as a thing? No, not at all. Of course not. And that's one sort of way of looking at atheism, and that's why I prefer to just say I'm a human being, a reasoning human mammal, and I'm trying to be as intellectually honest with myself as possible. But alright, so let me explain then how I see things, how I see the world and human beings. Humans to me are special. And not special in any sort of divine way, like religious people like to think, God's favorite creation and that sort of thing. That's nonsense. But no, we are special in that we are the only species on Earth to have evolved a brain complex enough to develop self-awareness and self-study. And it may be that we're the only beings in existence to have done this. And that's amazing, right? But that's just it. Amazing, but only appreciable as amazing by us because of the very fact. It's this sort of sense of self-consciousness that I think, like, as I was growing up, I imagined how our ancestors must have been fooled into imagining gods. He had many lonely nights staring to the tribal fire and some particularly inspired and existentially anxious old tribal medicine men probably gradually came up with this idea, they see all these mysterious forces in nature and that they all seem to be coming from somewhere, right? And caused by something, by someone, because for them, like, agency was, they understood it in terms of themselves, and they were these conscious beings. And so, yes, all these different patterns in nature caused them, they sort of combined it all, and a new sense of, we are here, but, like, so where did we come from? That must have come up at some point in their minds. So you can't really blame our ancestors for the birth of the idea of gods. But yes, eras later, here we are, still. And how? We've taken over the planet. We're the irrefutable masters of the earth. But the question still remains, like, where did we come from? And I think we're now finally starting to admit to ourselves that we've never really known, nor really know for sure even now. I mean, we're making progress, of course, in evolution. We know how complexity came from simplicity. But the origin of life we still are not sure about. And but that's okay. That's awesome, right? It's just another question which we probably will find the answer to. But we do know that we are made up of the same stuff as trees and worms and diamonds and polar bears. We were all born in the belly of a star, or many stars. And so, yeah, like, to me now, evolution just seems so obvious. But okay, I'll talk about evolution and our origins in a different episode. So yes, like, to me now, all the things people sort of believe in, from the oddest small town cult to the world's most common religions of Islam and Christianity, they're all fantasy. It's like, it's actually becoming harder and harder for me to remember how I ever made sense of the world in that way. Because, I was Christian for a short while when I was a kid and a teenager. Now I see all religions and associated, like, gods as mostly psychological crutches needed by the people to feel safe, to feel safe in a universe that they don't understand, and in an indifferent world that they perceive as unjust or even cruel. And also just the fact that their minds cannot accept, because they cannot even conceive of the idea of non-existence. I've had this trouble myself. You try to think about non-existence, about, like, just simply not existing, and your brain does backflips, So it's very hard to imagine that when you die, you simply will not exist. But besides the main religions, there is now today this wave of New Age ideas concerning universal energy and love as some kind of physical force, that sort of thing. And the beliefs developed or adopted through such thinking, like karma and reincarnation and auras and ki. Of course, reincarnation and karma are not exactly new, but they've taken on a new dimension with the New Age era now. And oh my gosh, that book, The Secret, as though thought alone can influence anything besides the thinker, and other things, like Reiki and homeopathy, and there's countless things that people believe in. But yeah, whatever combinations of these form one's new view of life, they're still not much better than religion, They are better than most religions, practically speaking. They're much less dogmatically demanding. But still, when it comes down to it, they are still beliefs that people adopt for almost no better reason than the desire to believe them. They simply need to have some worked out order in the universe in their minds that they can make sense of for their own peace of mind. Like I said in the previous episode, uncertainty is something people don't deal well with, and being okay with uncertainty is, for me, the key to if I may be as bold as to say, enlightenment. Being okay with uncertainty is the key to a real, true peace of mind. And many people sort of say, what's wrong with believing these things if it makes you happier? And I mean, there are advantages to living these different ways of life, So if it doesn't harm anyone, then what's wrong with it? And I'm not questioning the advantages. I'm sure that the psychological benefits of living the way of Zen Buddhism are great and plenty. And I'm also sure that, like most New Age nature worshipper types, probably do feel more content in life than, say, your average overworked secularist who doesn't believe in anything. But I'm not questioning the advantages. What I'm questioning is the irrational beliefs themselves. And actually also, by the way, I mean, you might think it's harmless, but when beliefs, as they often do, start interfering with public policy, especially you'll see, I mean, the classic example is the Islam countries where they base their law on their holy texts. And even in the USA, there's a lot of stuff going on, supposed to be separation of church and state, but quite often Christianity interferes in the lives of people who are just trying to, I mean, as like gay people, for example, they just want to marry and be happy, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. But because of the sort of Christian society, they often are persecuted, even with the new laws that allow gay marriage now. So yeah, it might on the surface seem benign, passive Christianity or passive belief, but it hooks into all sorts of places, and it's very hard to ignore that. So that's why I think that we should just get rid of the beliefs and everybody live a secular life. I mean, let me get back to the beliefs themselves. Like, that's the thing. That's what I question. That people find it necessary to believe in order to be so content in whatever it is. From the religions of the world to the smaller sort of New Age ideas that people have adopted now. I mean, let's take even the mildest, most harmless pantheistic statement, God is love, or God is nature. Like, what do these statements even mean, And know that I was once very New Agey, and explanations like, God is love, nature, your divine self. Look within you and you will understand. These are tricks I used to employ myself. And right now it makes as much sense to me as they should have back then. None at all. Like, why can't you just say nature is nature? Or even explain further, give a real definition. Nature is a complex system of various living organisms working interconnectedly in seeming harmony, and so fragile in that if only one small link in any given ecosystem is removed, the whole thing could be destroyed. Why not just that? Why not wonder and revere almost something that is true, the true nature of a thing, without superfluous and often meaningless embellishments? So yes, I think that's my stance. No superfluous embellishments. I'm all for playing with ideas. I mean, even running with those ideas for a while if you've thought about them long and hard enough and found them to be good. But you should always be prepared to change them, Convictions should be treated with wariness, because absolute truth is a rare and precious thing. And I mean, convictions inevitably develop as one goes along in life. So yeah, then, they need to be soundly defendable if you're going to have them. I've said before that I don't like convictions because, a conviction is usually exactly that, something you stick to no matter what. And I don't think that's a good philosophy in life. You should always be prepared to change. So yes, be meticulously vigilant with your thoughts and as honest with yourself as possible. And you should be fine. It's what, yeah. And this concerns confirmation bias as well, which I'll talk about in a different episode. I think that could be dedicated to an entire episode by itself. Anyway, so yes, this has all led me to being much more critical and cynical than I used to be. But as I tend to be overly idealistic, or I sort of have been in the past, I think that this is a good change in my life. And, people say that thinking scientifically all the time could take the magic out of things, but it really doesn't have to. I still love letting my imagination go wild when I read fantasy books, or play games. It's just that I've learned now that, you shouldn't mix that up with reality. And actually, like, the more I discover about the nature of reality, the more magical it seems to me than anything merely made up. So yeah, actually, if you think about it, like, true magic and beauty are limitless if you can go further than just making things up. But if you can express or explain reality itself using artistic means, doing it artistically or metaphorically, as only the human mind can, then that's what I think becomes true magic or true beauty. And then I wrote this little sentence here, which because I've been trying to say it sort of ad-lib, but it's not working out. So here goes. The generation and appreciation of the emulsion of art and science that is possible because of our evolved brains has got to be evolution's ultimate masterpiece. And it's a great pity how many of these brains use so little of their potential. So yes, everybody, I've said before somewhere, like, with evolution and our brains, it's like we've won an evolutionary race, and we are now the masters of the planet, and we're kind of like a Marvel superhero with our brains, and we should really use them. And I just feel like getting trapped into this thing, and unfortunately it happens because, we're born children and we have to grow up in environments that we have no choice about. But yeah, so that often inevitably leads into being trapped into a system of belief that's got nothing to do with the real world. And anything I can do to help people to get out of that trap, I will do. And I hope that this video and these videos and my channel in general will do that. But okay, I think that's long enough. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this episode. I would appreciate a like on the video because it helps the channel grow, and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss anything. And remember, there's also a new thing now with a little bell. After you've clicked subscribe, you click on the bell and you will be notified every single time I post a video, which is usually once a week. Sometimes I get 2 out in a week as well. But okay, once again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next episode. Bye bye.